All right. So we had to take a quick break because there was a lot of noise in the background. So we're back. We're going to go cameraless for the rest of this pod. So yeah, getting back onto manga creation, I'm going to ask you some questions. So first things first, what are the titles of your manga? And what are they about?
All right, so the two titles for my manga, the one I'm putting the most effort into is Three Trios. That's going to be a action adventure manga. Mainly the thought I had on that was the idea that there were a lot of characters in other series that went into groups of three doing something, and I thought that was pretty interesting, so to try something like that. And after some thorough checks with old friend of mine, we eventually went through the idea of making this manga. And yeah, that's kind of how Three Trios came to be. The other one is one that I'm thinking, one that I'm coming up with the story on myself. That one's entirely by me. It's actually called Jump Boy. So it's going to revolve around the Woodstay story, but the thing about the story is that the character is aware that he is the story. Mainly aware that his entire existence is just that of gag manga. So what he'll basically just have as much fun as he possibly can with the idea of, messing with whatever he wants to. That one, as I said, I came up with on my own, but I am having other inside help from it. Like I do have some people, some of my friends are actually a little involved in the series as well. So, they come in and pitch in as much as they can. But it's going to be a gag manga. Like I think I mentioned that already.
So how long have you been working on both of them?
For both of them, or did you mean one in specific?
Like individually, like how long have you been working on Jump Boy and how long have you been working on Three Trios?
So Three Trios, I have put a whole many years. I would have to say, I think since the start. I think since somewhere around the beginning of high school. So I've been working on a story for a long while.
Like 2015?
Yeah.
So you base a lot of your characters off of your friends. What inspired you to do
that? The idea on that was when they thought of me just wanting to involve my friends in this story. I can't really remember the whole details of it. I just remember me first actually having friends and just wanting to just draw them. And I think one thing led to another, and it just went to me using those drawings of my friends as actual characters.
Right. So you mentioned that well, I wanted to ask you what your biggest inspirations were, but I was going to say that you also mentioned like Akira Toriyama, and it can be seen in your art style how much Akira Toriyama kind of influenced it. Who are some of your other like inspirations, and in what ways did they inspire you?
I would have to say, well, okay, I do have these divided in like some areas. Akira Toriyama's art style is obviously the main one that pinpoints my motive to draw manga. Another thing about my style is that it also centers around the 80s and the 80s and the 90s style of manga, and kind of how people were drawing them back then. When it comes to the story, I actually have Ichiro Oda to think of as inspiration when I'm doing this stuff, because as far as I've known, as far as I've read anything, Ichiro Oda has been the best at constructing a long and yet a very amazing, compelling story. Not even just with the main characters, but with extras or even islands or cities, towns. Even when it comes to history, the guy knows what he's doing, and I just hope to eventually come on that same level.
So,
When it comes to the dynamic poses, definitely JoJo's gonna be a big inspiration on that one. It's just something about and well, and this one's the weird part because I remember people were telling me like the poses were weird and like JoJo, why am I following JoJo? JoJo looks super weird, and I think that's because they were focusing on the anime, and in some ways I could see why, but I mainly follow the manga uh, by its inspiration. The way they have their poses constructed in there, and the way their pacing is, it feels a lot more powerful to me. I see it as something different, so that I wanted to see if I could figure out how to capture that same essence.
yeah, I feel like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure captures that, like we talked about before, that unique and weirdness from
Yeah,
Japan. Like it really captures that. It's literally in the title. It's called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So when people watch it and are surprised that this show is bizarre, I'm like, it's literally in the title. You knew what you were getting
yeah.
into.
You should have known that, knowing that you were gonna actually watch this. So I don't
Yeah,
know what else you're expecting.
yeah. Um,
What when it comes to when it comes to movement, and this one's a new one for me. Uh, and by movement, I mean by the anatomy of a character. I think Captain Tsubasa has been a recent inspiration to me because recently, well, recently, I'd say like last year, I had I had played the game continuously, the newest one, Rise of New Champions, and I thought at one point, okay, I'm gonna read the manga and see what the story's about, and it's honestly amazing to me how this has never actually gotten a Western release because the way the manga is constructed is honestly just amazing. They have the characters doing or playing soccer in ways that I didn't think was possible. Uh, Kind of just the way that their movement is being shown. The way the way the manga artist draws the characters' bodies making a motion with their dribbles. When they make a shot towards the goalie, their limbs look like they're far more extended than they should. But in that sense, it's more like a perspective. Um, I, I I I feel like you understand what I mean. It's like
I could definitely show examples to kind of like illustrate what you're saying. As you know,
yeah. So it's hold on. I actually do have a copy with me. I think if I just get a visual observation, it might be a lot easier to describe.
um,
So it's like from the moment you get that same thing I mentioned before, where the character's movement makes you question why are they moving like this, why are they doing that. You get a lot of that with Captain Tsubasa. You kind of figure out the 1, 2, 3 part, how the character's movements are connecting to another character's. So, like I guess in an example, like you say you just kicked someone in the leg, and then or you see someone kick another person in the leg, and the first thing you're going to notice is maybe the leg, but then you're going to look up and see the expression on the person realizing they just got kicked in the leg. It's something like that.
right. So
So
I wanted to ask about like your process from like conceptualization. I can't speak today. Conceptualization. There we go. To writing and like sketching, and then into like the paneling and inking. Like, could you talk on that process a bit? Like, specifically, I want to hear about your concept stage. Like, how do you start? How did you start like coming up with the idea for the stories and like different characters, especially when it came to basing them off of friends?
weirdly enough, when it comes to the story, I did not have much of a big hand in it. Mainly just the idea, the concept of, you know, a, a group of three going out on an adventure or handling a job that they were assigned to. Um, but going through the going through the timeline of the story that I have all layered out, that's actually a lot more in contribution from the old friend of mine. Um, so she kind of she kind of told me how the story's gonna go. I usually jot it down, make sure I put a timeline, including panels, so that when I look at it, I'll get a sort of a small observational understanding of how I'm going to end up constructing one page. But lately, because you know, that old friend of mine, she had to leave Baltimore, so I usually ended up seeing if I can come up with the story on my own, and eventually led me on to going through YouTube, going through channels that know how to construct a story, or or understand how character arcs work. I get a lot of help understanding that stuff through a channel called Totally Not Mark and
Oh, hey,
Anime AJ.
I had literally just recently started watching Totally Not Mark. I think the first video of his I watched was actually a Berserk video. He was talking about actually he made a video, the video I was talking about Berserk not being able to be adapted. But then of course in the video he explains how it could potentially be adapted. And last night, like it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay, I need to go to sleep. But I stayed up for another hour to watch his video analyzing Bleach, which is like one of my favorite animes of all time. It's the anime that got me into anime and manga. Um, and you know, he basically just had a lot of thoughts about Bleach that I have, in the sense that the first 2 arcs are phenomenal. They're one of the best arcs in all of manga. But after that, it goes so far downhill, and it gets really bad, unfortunately. As much as I love that show, it gets super repetitive. But yeah, I recently started watching Totally Not Mark, and if you need some more resources, I could definitely give you some, and some help in
Oh
general.
yeah, yeah, I
'Cause
would definitely really like that. That would help. Yeah.
but yeah, was there anything you wanted to add before I ask another question?
Oh, I guess aside from that, I I do sometimes get a little bit of help from some of my friends who are actual characters in the series. So sometimes they'll actually pitch in. Sometimes they'll give me information that I may not know, even if I search up on the internet. Like say something about a native tribe, since that's something I'm trying to evolve a little bit in my story. Um, get a little bit of help from a friend of mine for that. It's one of those kinds of examples.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, do you prefer digital or traditional, like drawing?
So for manga, I would say I'm definitely more traditional.
Mm,
It's just something that I stay true. It's just something I stay true to when I'm just when it comes to drawing manga. I just feel that that's the original way that it's intended for. Digitally, I would prefer to do it when it's something bigger. Like say if I'm doing a cover, then I would have to definitely do something like that. But I would still try to I would still try to make my work on the computer look as similar as it could on if I was doing it traditionally. Since I don't actually have a drawing tablet, I would have to I would actually have to draw everything through either my finger on my phone or a mouse on my computer, and it wouldn't not actually that big of a challenge. Um, I'd say it's a little bit easier on my phone, but I'd say doing it on the computer really isn't challenging either. You do have a bit of a handle on it, but what I would say is just a lot more comfortable for me to just use pen on paper.
yeah. So the last thing I wanted to ask you before we move on and do these last few segments is what resources would make your work easier if you had them, like technology, materials, or like an assistant or things like that? Like if you had them, would make it a much more streamlined process?
I'm I guess I'm not. too sure. I guess in some ways, I guess I could find more utensils that could help me draw things like speed lines. I'm almost certain that there's a type of utensil for it. Um,
Scanner would
it,
probably be useful.
I think things like that would definitely help out a lot more. But so far,
I'm gonna
I
join
don't
it.
really think I have any need for anything to help me improve. I think I really just need all that
Not
I
improve,
just need all that I have.
not improve, but like make the work like easier and more streamlined, maybe faster or something like that. Not necessarily
Ah,
make you
well,
work better, like just make you work more efficiently.
then I would say I would definitely say a scanner then, since for me to scan my work, I need to actually use my phone. I don't really have a printer or a scanner of some sorts like that to actually get my stuff on the computer easily.